All right. Well, welcome. Happy Thursday. It's always nice to do this with you guys every week. So thanks to those of you who keep showing up every Thursday for these webinars. We truly appreciate it. It's a great way for us to be able to get information to counselors and advisors statewide. So thank you so much for signing up for these webinars. We know you can't always attend, and just remember that we will always send you the recording so you can watch it at a time that is maybe more convenient to you. So this morning, we are going to be talking about changes to the 2024-25 FAFSA, which I know we have covered in many of our previous trainings. Today is kind of exciting because we will actually get to go through a demo of the new FAFSA, so you can actually see what the new FAFSA will look like. So that will be exciting. With me today, I have Joy Miller, who is the Scholarship Program Manager for the State Board. She oversees all of our scholarship programs, including the Idaho Opportunity Scholarship. So you have probably interacted with her in the past. She will be giving an update on how students can make changes to their scholarship application this year toward the end of the presentation. And Mallory Estman is also going to be joining us, hopefully here shortly. She is with the Nampa School District, and she has been doing a lot of FAFSA work with us this year. So she's been part of a lot of the trainings that we have been doing. So we're really grateful for Mallory, and she will hopefully be joining us here soon. All right, so we will go ahead and get started. Just kind of quickly want to run through our agenda. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we do have a pretty full hours worth of material for you today. So we'll try to get through everything in a timely fashion, but here's our plan. We're going to look really quickly at our FAFSA completion from last year. So for the class of 2023, kind of what that looked like and how we compared to others nationwide. We're also going to go through the top 5 FAFSA changes. There's a lot of changes on the form coming up this year, but we're going to just kind of quickly review the top 5 changes. We're going to talk a little bit about FSAID because we know that that's something that we can be working on right now for the FAFSA opens. And then we're going to get into that demo. We're going to go through what they're calling a prototype, which is kind of a sneak peek of the FAFSA form. So we're really excited about that. And then Joy will wrap things up for us by kind of walking us through how students can make changes in Scholarship Idaho, because we know that this year there's a lot going on with Idaho Launch and Idaho Opportunity Scholarship, and that students may need to make changes to their application. So that is our plan. Welcome, Mallory. We're excited to see you this morning. Mallory and I are going to be kind of tag teaming the demo together. So I will start us off by talking a little bit about our FAFSA completion for the year we just finished, and then we'll pass things over to Mallory in a couple slides. So the graph that you're looking at on the screen right now shows Idaho's FAFSA completion rate through June 30th of 2023. So this again would be for the class of 2023 that just graduated. The orange line is Idaho's FAFSA completion rate, and then the blue line is the national FAFSA completion rate. So you can see that as of June 30th, Idaho was just about 40%, a little over 40% of our seniors from the class of 2023 had completed a FAFSA, compared to about 53% of seniors nationwide. So I don't think I have to tell anyone if you've been paying attention to FAFSA completion in Idaho that we typically do lag behind nationwide FAFSA completion. The good news is that our FAFSA completion is actually increasing from previous years. We know that pretty much everyone took a hit during the pandemic, where, of course, a lot of students did not go on to college and were therefore not completing their FAFSA. So this is kind of where we're at. And of course, we always want to increase from previous years. So I think it's just nice to kind of know where did we end up? So it would be exciting to see us maybe increase from that 40% for the class of 2024. Unfortunately, that 40% completion rate does put us as 48 out of 51 states. So definitely not where we want to be. We don't love being at the bottom of these lists, but the cool part is that we were actually 5th in the country for year-over-year percent change, which means that we actually increased our FAFSA completion in 2023 over the class of 2022 by 7%, which again was a big gain. And so I think that's a really positive sign that things are rebounding and that seniors are hopefully starting to kind of get back into that college going mindset after the pandemic. So there is some encouraging news for sure, but definitely work to be done. We would love to not stay at that 48 spot. But again, we just kind of wanted to share this data with you so that you know where we're starting from as we move into this new cycle. So kind of going along with that, hopefully you received an email from me this week about the Idaho FAFSA Completion Challenge. This is a brand new initiative that we are trying to try to increase our FAFSA completion statewide, because we know how hard it's going to be this year with a new FAFSA and a delayed opening. So if you did not get an email from me this week about joining the FAFSA Completion Challenge, you can definitely scan that QR code. I will also send the link in the follow-up email after today's webinar. But basically, it's really easy to join. What you're going to do is you're going to complete a survey and give me information about your school. And then in that survey, you're going to set a FAFSA completion goal for the class of 2024. So you're going to say, I want 50% of my seniors to complete a FAFSA. And we do, I know everybody's hesitant and everybody's a little nervous about the FAFSA. And so, it's okay if you don't meet your goal, but it's good to set that sort of like audacious goal, right? Like what would you love to see happen in your school this year? And then we are asking schools who are part of the challenge to host at least one FAFSA completion event. In person is best, but we know for some schools that virtual might be the better option. We do hope that our larger schools with 200 or more seniors would host hopefully 2 events. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down each school into categories by number of seniors, and then you will compete against schools that are similar size to you, and your school could win $500 to use toward FAFSA completion events or college going activities, anything to really boost your college and career going activities. So super exciting. We hope you join us. Again, I will put the link in the email today when I send out the recording, but you can also scan that QR code if you have not registered yet. You have until December 1st to register, so I will send reminders. Okay, so we're going to move on, and I'm going to turn things over to Mallory, who's going to give us some reminders about the 24-25 FAFSA, and then we'll transition into the demo.
Perfect.
All yours, Mallory.
Jenny. Sorry, I was on a little late, technical issues this morning. So I'm Mallory Essman. I am a college and career counselor in the Nampa School District. I kind of just really am a nerd about the FAFSA, so that's part of why I am a part of this initiative and have been doing all these fun presentations with Jenny and with the state board. I'm also just really passionate about what FAFSA does for our students. And so before we jump into some of these nitty-gritty details about the upcoming FAFSA, I like to remind everybody that this is the only FAFSA that our seniors know. So while some of us have been doing FAFSAs for years, and this giant change is going to seem really scary, please do your best to keep those hesitations and those fears within safe spaces with colleagues, and of course, share your frustrations with us and with others. But for our students, do your best to just get them excited about completing the FAFSA in general, rather than, increasing this heightened fear that they already have about a scary document. So big reminder, as everybody probably knows, if anyone has tried to start a FAFSA, it's not open yet. Normally it opens October 1st and it will not open until December. And we still do not know what day in December, which kind of the closer we get to December makes me think it will be like December 31st, which within the law, they are allowed to go up until December 31st, just has to be done in December. So plan for January events. And I have seen some students who've actually tried to start the 23-24 FAFSA, some current seniors. Please just keep an eye on that. That is the wrong form. When we were doing our college application week at a couple of different schools, we had a few students who should be creating FSA IDs, but they actually just tried to start the FAFSA. And as I'm walking around, I'm like, oh no, that's not where you're supposed to be. So big reminder, this is what it looks like on the actual FAFSA page. They have the ability to click start 23-24 form, but they should not. So these are some of the biggest changes that you are going to be seeing. Number one, that is going to really change the way that we kind of do things, is that the FSA ID needs to be created and verified before starting a FAFSA. In former years, we were able to start an FSA ID and a FAFSA at the same event. So if, families showed up and they did not have pre-created FSA IDs, it was not the end of the world. They were able to still create it and start their FAFSA that day. That is definitely not the practice that you should be trying to follow for this upcoming year, because in order for them to successfully complete a FAFSA, they will need to have their FSA ID both created and verified. And I believe it takes, like 3 to 5 business days for that to happen. So try at least a week before your FAFSA event to be having your parents and students creating their FSA IDs, and they can do that now. So you could have an FSA ID workshop or encourage your families to create FSA IDs right now, and then they'll be ready to go for December. This form is a little different from previous years. It's role-based. So we used to be able to sit down and we would have, parent and student there, and we would be able to kind of just switch back and forth on the questions. Everyone fills it out the same way with under one login and then sign at the end. At this point, the form, if you are the parent, you will only see parent-related questions. And if you are the student, you will only see student-related questions. They will not see the others' answers or questions. We also have a difference in family size. It used to be household size, and it was based off the number of people who lived in the home. At this point, it's based on the number of tax exemptions claimed on the tax forms that will be transferred using FSA IDs. So that family size component, that will be the number of tax exemptions for that filer. So if that is not accurate as to who is actually living in the home, there will be an option, and we'll show you when we go through the demo, that you can click and you can say, hey, actually, we have 5 people in this home instead of 4. And that you do have the ability to override that, and it will only show you the number of exemptions listed if you click that. Very big one, EFC, that was the expected family contribution. That is now the student aid index. So you will no longer be using that terminology. You'll be using the student aid index. And in former years, the lowest EFC, or estimated family contribution, would be 0. And now our student aid index is actually going to allow for negative SAIs of negative 1,500. That does not necessarily mean that they will be getting more in a Pell Grant because they have negative 1,500 instead of a 0. But it does allow our institutions to kind of differentiate between our neediest students. So that can really help establish some additional aid that is need-based at the institution level. Some things that are going to be included now that maybe weren't in former years, we will be seeing child support received, and small businesses and farms are going to be included as assets. So try to prepare your families that they will need to know how much child support is received, and basically the value of their small business or farm. Previously, if it was less than 100 employees, they didn't have to include it, but at this point, all of them have to be included. And then when we're talking about FSA IDs, these are just some things that are going to change a little bit to the way the FSA ID works, because we talked about FSA IDs are going to be required for everybody. So anyone who's going to be contributing on the FAFSA needs to have one of those FSA IDs, and they need to create it and have it verified before they can be used on a FAFSA. This raised a lot of concern for a lot of us about our undocumented parents, and the federal student aid has told us that there will be an option for undocumented parents to be able to create FSA IDs. This process will not be open until December, though, when FAFSA opens. So unfortunately, we won't be able to get a jump start on assisting our undocumented parents with creation of FSA IDs until FAFSA actually opens. They will be using the TransUnion questions to answer and create their FSA IDs. They will have the option to create them, but they'll see a slightly different process. It will require a mailing address. When they create that information, when they create their FSA ID, they'll need to enter that. And then hopefully that's a mailing address that is on file somewhere that can then populate those TransUnion questions that will be necessary to create that FSA ID. In former years, we've been able to use zeros online for parents who don't have socials. That is no longer going to be a fix. We should never be using zeros online moving forward, but you can use it on a paper FAFSA if you have to go the paper FAFSA route. However, when we're talking about paper FAFSA, we're not referring to the paper signature page. In former years, students put zeros for their parent social, and then they went all the way through the FAFSA. At the end, they printed a signature page and mailed it into the federal student aid. That will no longer be an option. We will be trying to have parents create their FSA IDs and use those for their signature purposes, whether they are undocumented or not. And then big one, everyone must have a verified email address. So before you have anybody come to an FSA ID event, maybe you send a reminder out that says, please make sure you have a valid email address so that we can complete the required documents.
Okay. I know we've got a couple of questions coming in, so I was just going
let's take a pause for a second.
Yeah, maybe take a little quick break. So there was a question about, do both parents need an FSA ID now? It's kind of similar to the way it was before, where if the parents are married and they file their taxes together, so they file jointly, then only one parent needs that FSA ID. However, if you have parents who are married, but they file separate taxes, they would each need an FSA ID because they're each going to be contributing their tax information. Mallory, do you have anything, or Joy, to add to that part?
No, I think you covered that. And then there's the question about no socials equal paper FAFSA. Only if they are unable to create an FSA ID using the undocumented route. And that's only for the parent too. Just a reminder, students without social security numbers, unfortunately, are not able to complete a FAFSA.
The federal student aid just released the process for undocumented parents, how they will get an FSA ID. That was just released last week. However, it's not actually open yet. They just told us like what the process will be. It's very similar to what a documented person would go through to create their FSA ID. There's just some additional questions at the end that they need to verify their information. We will send out, we're kind of talking about how to inform everybody about this change because it's not available yet. It's going to open at the same time that the FAFSA opens, which again, we don't know when that is. So we're kind of talking about how we want to go through that. So if we're going to maybe record a webinar and send it out to everyone, create sort of a how-to guide. But just know that, yes, undocumented parents will be able to create an FSA ID. But if that process for some reason doesn't work for that undocumented parent, then you could fill out a paper FAFSA as like an alternative. Okay, so if both parents don't file taxes due to unemployment, that is okay. If they are married, then they can put they can put, I think both of those parents would, in that situation, would need an FSA ID, right, Mallory and Joy?
Yeah, I think they'd both need one because they'd have to verify with the IRS that they are non-filing.
Yeah.
So both of them would create an FSA ID, and then that instead of in former years they had to create, get that signature page and email send a letter from the IRS to confirm that. The IRS will just be able to validate that they are non-filers through their FSA ID.
Perfect. To create an FSA ID for documented anyone with a social security number, they do have to have their date of birth, their social security number, their address, and email address. For an undocumented parent to create their FSA ID, they basically need all of the same things, except for they would not have a social security number to enter, and they would have to provide a mailing address. So we can send out a list of things that are needed for the FSA ID creation process to everyone who registered for this webinar today. And in terms of when you're going to receive an email when the FAFSA is open, as soon as we know, we promise we will blast it from every possible communication device that we have. So as soon as we know, you will know. We hope it's soon, but again, we don't know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and transition us into the FAFSA demo. I know there's a lot of questions. And just remember, we're all feeling anxious about this. There are a lot of, we all used to feel like experts if we've been doing this for a while, and now we all feel like we're starting at square one, and we are, but we're in this together. We're going to learn a lot. So I know there's anxiety, but just remember, you can reach out to us. We will be here to help, and we're all gonna get through this.
And ideally, if things work the way they say they're going to, this is going to be an easier FAFSA. The number of questions on the former FAFSA was 108. There are now only 36 questions in the actual FAFSA. So that's a big, big change. While you're launching that, I will answer for Tim, who said, does it ask in the FAFSA for parent socials like it does now? No, if they have an FSA ID, they won't be prompted to enter additional social information. And you'll be able to see in just a minute what that actually looks like.
And I did want to give a quick chance for, hopefully, Dwight, hopefully you're able to chat in here with us, but Dwight Barrett is the financial aid director at NNU, and I asked him to join today for some of these questions that are coming up. So I saw that your hand was up, Dwight, so any light you want to shed on this, we would love to hear it.
For having me. If my hand is up, I don't know how I did that. You guys are doing great, but if you have any questions or things that I can help with, just let me know and I'll either do it in the chat or chime in.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Thanks. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you for being here. Yes, so we did want to invite our financial aid partners in this because they are truly the experts. Mallory, Joy, and I have received some training for sure, but our financial aid folks are invaluable. So thank you, Dwight, for being here. And we'll see if we get any tricky questions. All right, so I am going to really quickly, before we jump into the demo, just give a quick caveat that this is a demo. It is a prototype, so it is not the real FAFSA. So when you see it today, it's going to look exactly like what the FAFSA will look like, but it is not the real one. So this doesn't mean it's open. This is just for us to get a sneak peek as to what things are going to look like. There is some limited functionality with this prototype, meaning that it's not going to have all the same features that the real FAFSA will have. So we'll kind of address that as we're going through it, but we just wanted you to be aware. And you can also access the this tool as well. We'll put that link in the chat as well as send it out in an email so that you can play around with the prototype if you would like. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share a different one. All right. So we are actually going to be hopping over to, Mallory, can you see that? Am I sharing the right screen? Okay, good, good, good. All right, so we are on the National College Attainment Network's site. They have an amazing toolkit for practitioners to use. And so I will pop that into the chat really quickly so that you all can follow along. Oops. But on this website, there is a link to the FAFSA prototype. So we're going to click here under Tools 2425 FAFSA prototype. Got to scroll all the way down here. If you're going to do this on your own, if you want to look at the prototype in your own time, you'll click on the link and then it will ask you for this access code, which is just prototype 2425. You can just kind of copy and paste that into there. Because I've been in here before, it's going to let me in. It's going to immediately tell me that this is a limited prototype and that it's not going to have all the same functions as the real FAFSA will have. So you just have to know that going into it. So on the prototype, there's actually several different views that we can get of the new FAFSA. We're going to be able to look at a student, a dependent student, as well as a dependent parent. And then you can also see, we're probably not going to have time to do any of these today, but you can see there's other scenarios for parents who have started a FAFSA, but they need to go in and change something, or they need a parent or a student who started a FAFSA who needs to go in and change something. So you can see a lot of different scenarios, as well as anyone who might need to make a correction to a FAFSA. And then if you scroll down, you can actually also see some of the other aspects of the FAFSA that are going to be interesting to you, such as the FAFSA landing page and then the FAFSA submission summary, which is what a student will see after they submit their FAFSA. So this landing page, this is what the new landing page is going to look like. It's different than what they currently see. So it will say 2425. And again, like Mallory mentioned, it is very important that the class of 2024, they complete the 2425 FAFSA. If they're going to plan to take summer classes, they will do last year's FAFSA for those summer classes, but then the 2425 FAFSA will cover the academic year for fall and spring of next year. So this is where the landing page will be, which again is not, this site doesn't actually exist. This is just a demo today. All right, so we are going to start, and Mallory and I are going to kind of go back and forth on this one, but we're going to start with Rhea, who is our student, and we're going to see what it looks like to walk through the FAFSA as this student. So we're going to pretend that Rhea would have gone to the landing page, she would have started a new form, and she has already created her FSA ID. She already has that set up, so she's going to log in with that FSA ID. She's going to click Start New Form, and then she is going to select that she is the student. And then this is kind of new. If you remember doing FAFSAs in the past, there were a couple of screens at the beginning that had a lot of text that typically students kind of skipped through. There are now 4 screens at the beginning of every FAFSA form for both the student and the parent contributor that is called an onboarding process. And it's basically the purpose of this onboarding, the purpose of these 4 screens is to explain to the student and or the parent what they're about to embark on. What is the FAFSA? They can watch the video if they'd like. What is a contributor and how will they contribute? So it's basically directions, what to expect, how long is this process going to take, and then what happens after they submit the FAFSA. So they do have to click through each one of those 4 onboarding screens to actually get to the FAFSA. These onboarding screens will only show up the first time they log into their FAFSA. If they come back to finish a FAFSA or come back to correct something, they will not have to go through those again. All right, Mallory, do you want to take over for a minute and on this part?
So this is great because it kind of ties into the question that we saw earlier about if they will see, they'll have to enter social security numbers. As you see, it's already transferred over from their FSA ID information. So they won't be editing this information. If they have to change that, they have to edit their FSA ID. This stuff will come over directly for them. And then they'll enter their mailing address. Go ahead and hit continue. Their state, and then, you know, the date the student became a legal citizen. And for this purposes, the state's New York.
And when you're playing around in this, if you want to, you can just type in random information.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and then this is extremely important. So this page here, again, this is a prototype, but you will see this form here. So this page is going to require that the student give consent and approval for their information to be shared from the IRS to the FAFSA. If a student does not give consent, they will not be eligible for any federal student aid. It's extremely important that they do that and they give the approval. And it tells you if you try not to give consent, it will say, are you really sure you don't want to do that? The student would be ineligible for federal student aid if you make that decision. So we really don't want students to indicate that. However, in order for their information to be shared, this is kind of in lieu of, right, that like IRS data retrieval tool that was sometimes really difficult for us. So this is very important that students give consent. If they don't, it will tell them that they're not able to access federal student aid. It does seem kind of scary, but hopefully we can get the students to read at least the green summary box. The next thing they're going to enter into is their personal circumstances. So the student current marital status. For our seniors in high school, we'll hopefully be saying single, never married. And then this is slightly different from what we have seen in the past, because it does say first year freshman, second year sophomore, which can be sort of difficult when we have a lot of dual credits, because sometimes students get very excited that they have a bunch of dual credits and like, oh, I'm a sophomore. Students who are entering college for the first time as a full-time college student should select first year freshman.
And then no, they do not have their first bachelor's degree, so they would select no.
And then these personal circumstances are going to be similar to the ones that you saw in the old FAFSA. They should read through them, indicate any that might apply to them. If none of them apply, then they will say none of these apply. And then other circumstances, this is going to be our homelessness question that you're going to see. At any time, was the student unaccompanied or either homeless or self-supporting or at risk of being homeless? And then we just want to show you what it looks like. Yeah, if we say yes. And then the next question pops up. Did any of the following determine the student was homeless or at risk of becoming homeless? And you will see that there's a couple of, there's some new stuff in here. At this point, director or a designee of a project supported by a federal TRIO or Gear Up program grant is added, as is financial aid administrator. So those are some new people who could potentially designate students as homeless. Yeah, if you say no, you don't see that question. Do you want to take unusual?
Sure. Okay. So this is also a new addition to the 24-25 FAFSA, these student unusual circumstances. So it gives you some examples here, but it's really important. This is really for our students that we're working with that maybe do not qualify as homeless, but they do not have access to their parents, or that they're not in contact with their parents. And contacting their parents could pose a risk to that student. So here's some examples. So possibly you're working with a student who maybe left home due to an abusive or threatening environment. Maybe they were abandoned or estranged from their parents. They could have refugee or asylee status and are separated from their parents. Victims of human trafficking. If the student is incarcerated or the parent is incarcerated, and contacting would pose a risk to the student, or they are otherwise unable to contact or locate their parents. So this is really all encompassing. Now, it's important to remember that, like, if you say yes to this, the financial aid office, wherever the student plans to attend, is going to want to follow up and find out what are the circumstances. There's likely going to need to be some sort of documentation provided to prove, right, that there really is no contact with the parent, and that the parent and contacting the parent may pose a risk to the student. So it's great that this is in here, because it does help those students who really just cannot get in touch with their parents, or really if they were to get in touch with their parents, it would be an unsafe situation for them. So if they did say yes to this, I'm not sure it's going to let us do that actually. Okay, yeah, perfect. So we'll go back and show you what they do if they say no. But if they say yes, what's going to happen is they are going to be determined as provisionally independent. So really what that means is when you're independent on the FAFSA, that means that you only have to provide information about yourself and not about your parent. Now, provisionally is important, right? That they're not going to be deemed fully independent on the FAFSA until that financial aid office can review their circumstances and possibly look over documentation to determine whether or not that independent status is going to remain. So it will allow the student to go ahead and complete the FAFSA all the way through as an independent student, but it's going to be really important that that student then follows up with the financial aid office. Most likely the financial aid office is going to reach out to that student to say, hey, we need some more information from you. So that's really important to know. So if we said, no, this does not apply to us, then we're not going to be, oh.
Yeah, it's not letting me change it either.
Oh, maybe it's gonna, here's a limitation of our prototype we just found. So maybe what we're gonna have to do you think we're gonna have to start over on the?
Yeah, it's not letting me go back to change it from provisionally.
Darn it. Okay. Let's see. Can we get out of this? Okay. This is a prototype. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you're working with a prototype. I wonder if we can just log back in and start a new one.
That's what I would do. Yeah, it's definitely limited. It's definitely still helpful. We also would not recommend that you are doing this with a student necessarily. This is mostly for practitioner educator purposes. And some of these may change, right? Because since it's not officially open, it could potentially still see some newer, slightly different screens between now and when it actually launches.
Apologize. I'm going to try to get through this really quickly so that we can get back to where we were.
While you're doing that, I'm going to see if I can find in here somewhere. We have a cool graphic about how hopefully, if all of this goes according to plan, we will be seeing a pretty big increase in Pell Grants. I want to say it's like 950,000 additional Pell Grants are estimated to be offered with this new FAFSA. So as much as it's scary and gives us all anxiety, and we're like, why did the feds do this while we were still, practicing? Couldn't they have waited until we retired? At the same time, hopefully we are going to be offering 930 additional Pell Grant Award recipients are estimated. So if nothing else, we're going to power through this to hopefully get 930,000 additional Pell Grant Awards to our kiddos.
Okay, we're back to where we wanted to be. So this is typically we're going to be working with dependent students, right? Dependent means that you are living with your parent or parents, and they are providing the majority of your support. So one thing that's new this year that I am a little fearful could cause a little bit of confusion is when they get to this page that tells them that they have been deemed a dependent student, they give them this option to apply for a direct unsubsidized loan only. This would only be something you would want to click if this was a student who had a parent who was absolutely unwilling to provide their information on the FAFSA, and they don't fit that unusual circumstances. They're not homeless. They don't really meet any of those other criteria to be considered independent. This would be their only option. So we do not want the majority of our students to click this. This is really a last resort. Really what we want is that, no, we do not want a direct unsubsidized loan only. We want to see what's available to us in full. All right, Mallory, do you want to take over the parent part?
Yeah, let me get caught up to you real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about the parents, and that this is for the student, about the student's parents. You're not seeing what the parent will see yet. So are parents married to each other? In this circumstance, we're going to say yes. And we're going to provide information for both parents. So we'll continue.
Can we do a no?
Yeah.
Just to show them the wizard. I think we've talked to you guys about having a new parent wizard. So depending on what they say, they'll see different screens pop up.
And we were really kind of hoping that the wizard was going to be a little bit more exciting than just built-in questions, but it's not. And so if we say parents are not married to each other, it'll ask, do parents live together? If they say no, this is a very important factor that is now what's going to be used to determine kind of whose information goes on the FAFSA. Is, did one parent provide more financial support than the other parent over the last 12 months? So that's the big question of how they now want our parents to be reported on the FAFSA. In the past, it used to be, you know, who did we get the most information? I mean, who did you spend the most amount of time with at whose house? But now it is specifically about financial support, and there's lots of different arguments as to whether, you know, the person who pays the most in child support equals the person who is the most financially supportive, or the person with whom the child lives because they're paying for rent and all those things. Our guidance is simply to try and have them make a rational decision with one another about who provides the most financial support. And I know that's really tricky.
If they do select no, they in the language of the new FAFSA, does they refer to the parent with the greater income or assets? So it really is advantageous for the parent to discuss that and determine which one they deem as providing more financial support. So if there is that one person, it's going to ask, has that person then remarried? And then it will come up with, this is whose parent information you should provide.
And if you say yes to the parent having been remarried, it will then say they need information for both parent and step parent. So now we're going to see kind of what it looks like for us to invite parents to be contributors on the FAFSA. So this is what you will see. They would enter in information for their parents, and this is kind of the tricky part. When they're inviting their parent, they will need to know all of this information about their parent. So ideally, we have parent and student there together. They don't necessarily need to be at this exact juncture because they can just enter in the information and it will send an invite to the parent. For our undocumented families, our parents, they can select the parent doesn't have a social security number, and then that's when they would be redirected to the undocumented pathway. It's important, you know, that the students know this information walking in if they're actually planning on starting a FAFSA at that time. And we'll then send that invite to the parent, and they'll get an email asking them to be a contributor on, what was the girl's name? Rhea's application. Yes.
All right. So now we're on the student demographics section, where we're just going to answer some pretty simple questions about gender and ethnicity. They can always choose prefer not to answer, and they can choose more than one for student race, and there are different options if they so choose to you know, want to be specific about their race or ethnicity. In terms of citizenship, those questions are the same. So U.S. citizen, or national. Eligible non-citizen may be a student who has a green card, maybe a refugee student who has been given temporary citizenship, they would be eligible. So if I used to work with a lot of refugee students at the school that I worked at, and so we did this one a lot. This A number is the number that is on their green card. So if they are eligible non-citizen, they will need to have that number as well. The way this question is worded is different than in the past. Did either of the students' parents attend college or complete college? So there's some different options here, and there's always the option of I don't know. So could be that they attended but didn't complete, or didn't attend at all, or one completed, or both completed. So just pick one for today. This is a new question as well. Was a student's parent or guardian killed in the line of duty, either while serving on active duty as a member of the armed forces on or after the events of 9/11, or performing official duties as a public safety officer? This is really for a specific grant program given by the federal government. And so every student is going to answer this question at this point to see if they're eligible. Do you want to do high school? Am I moving too quickly? Oh, sorry, you're muted. I'll keep going just for time's sake. We're going to pick high school diploma as what my status will be at the beginning of the 24-25 year. And then again, for these purposes, just know that if you pick Idaho, it's not going to have real cities in here. So you're just going to pick one just because that's what's in the prototype. But basically, there's drop downs based on the city that they select, and then they will click on their high school and continue, confirm their high school. And now we're going to move into the student finance section. Mallory, you want to take this one? Or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I'll take that. So this is information about the students. So a lot of it's going to come over automatically from them creating their FSA ID. But it does state at the very top to refer to the students' 2022 tax returns to answer the following questions. Most likely for our students, they're not going to have IRA rolled into another IRA or qualified plan. And for our first-time seniors, they likely won't have any college grant scholarships or AmeriCorps reported as income, nor will they have any foreign earned income. And then student assets, it still asks that same question that we saw previously of current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts. And then current net worth of investments, including real estate. Most of our students don't have investments. Current net worth of business and investment farms. So if the student happens to have a business that they run, I have a couple of students with some side hustles, they would need to enter information unless they already qualify as not having to report assets. But if you have students or parents who don't see the asset questions, that typically means that they have qualified as having not been required to answer those questions. So you may see FAFSAs that don't have that question. And then this is kind of exciting. They can now add their colleges. You'll see a few differences. They can now add up to 20 schools. So that's really exciting. At one time, it used to just be 10. And then they no longer ask if the student will be living on campus or off campus. I'll show you.
Pick one. How about that?
Yeah, there we go.
1 out of 20. Wow.
And then if they needed to come back and add additional schools, they could do that at a later time. But we do have some students who are applying to 20 different colleges. So now it'll tell you some information about the colleges, and you can actually click that view info and it will tell you information about that school, which is kind of exciting. And this information, I believe, comes from College Scorecard. And if you're not familiar with College Scorecard, check it out. It's super cool. So it'll tell you some basic information about the different colleges that they had selected, which is kind of exciting to have that direct link, which is nice. But like we said, we will no longer be asked to identify if they're going to be living on campus or off campus. And then they have a bit to review the information that they put in and make sure that they answered everything the way that they were supposed to. And then it will show at the bottom there, the contributor section. So this section is shared with one contributor. These are the contributors. We sent the invitation, the date that we did that. And then you can also click that manage contributor information if you need to make any changes. So for example, the most common thing that is probably going to happen is that students entered something incorrectly, right? So maybe they put the wrong email in, they can then go in and look at what they put in and change it and send it again. They can also invite both parents, if both parents, even if they don't need to be both added onto the FAFSA. And then at that point, we're told it's just kind of a race. Whoever creates their FSA ID and finishes FAFSA first gets it all done. And now the student would be signing and completing their portion. And you're almost there. The student has done their part. Now they're going to be waiting for their parent to go in and complete their portion.
Yeah, and for the sake of time today, we did just really want to go through the student section. I don't think we're going to have time to go through the parent section, but again, because we gave you the link to this training toolkit, and now you know that you can access this FAFSA prototype. We encourage you, if you have some time between now and Christmas, most likely, you can go around and you can play in this prototype, and you can click on some of the different options there for you, because you can actually look at the parent. You can look at all these other scenarios. We'll really quickly show you what the FAFSA submission summary will look like. This is what a student will see once all contributors have provided their information and signed their FAFSA. So once the student section is complete, once the parent section is complete, and the FAFSA is completely submitted, then they will be able to see their estimated Pell Grant, as well as their loans, a work study status, which you probably noticed on the FAFSA, it did not ask if they were interested in work study. Colleges are now going to be determining that work study designation on the college side. So there are different tabs on this FAFSA submission summary. The overview, of course, is what we're going to be most interested in, what they're estimated to receive. They can go back and they can look at all their answers or make a correction if they need to. They can look and see what schools they have sent their FAFSA to. And then if there's anything that they need to do in terms of like, if they need to make a correction, if they're missing something, it will be on that next steps tab, and they will be able to see all of that really important information there. So just know, also on this eligibility overview, if you scroll down, you will see the student's SAI, that student aid index, and you can see in this example that there is a negative number, because now we can go all the way down to negative 1,500. So I know this was really, really quick, but I want to make sure that we allow some time for Joy to show us how a student might make a change in Scholarship Idaho, because we've been receiving a lot of those questions. So Joy, thank you so much for being so patient with us to get through that. And I will let Joy share her screen now so she can kind of show us what that might look like if a student needs to log back into Scholarship Idaho and make a change to something they've already submitted.
Just make sure. Share.
Sorry, Joy,
oh,
I know.
I can't share.
Oh, really? Oh, dang it. Okay. Let me see. Okay, try now.
Okay, there we
Sorry.
are. Let me get to the. No, you're fine. I just want to make sure. And my headphones are giving me trouble. Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
So this is what it looks like when a student has submitted an application, and everything is submitted, the opportunity is still waiting for the 24-25 FAFSA. They can go here to review. and they can go back to any page in the application that they want to. So they can go, oh, I know I said I was going to go to Boise State for accounting. But now I want to go to College of Southern Idaho for agribusiness. Now that's going to make them ineligible for opportunity. So if they make that change, if they go through this whole thing again, it's going to say submitted but no longer eligible because they selected a 2-year institution. I think typically something is supposed to pop up saying, are you sure you want to do that? And then they don't have to submit them. Just go back to their status page and it'll have the changes say submitted and eligible, pending letters of recommendation for Governor's Cup. So it's really that easy. They can also go to the main menu or hamburger menu here at the top and then go to apply, and it will take them to their application, as you can see. And knowing some of our students, they can go back in. This one is where the warning button came up to where it's like, hey, you're about to change your institution. This could, this action will remove the selected program, and you're gonna have to do it all over again. So then they can go back and say, no, I actually want to go to Boise State. I want to go into accountancy and make that change again. So it's really easy, but I realize it's not intuitive. And if I can just spell accountancy correctly, then it'll be better. I realize it's not intuitive that students can actually go back into their application, but if they just review application, they can see that they are good to go when they log in on their status page. And once they submit an application, it takes them right to the status page that you see here. So pretty simple.
Awesome. Thank you, Joy. Also, in case you were like, whoa, I just kind of missed that. That was a lot. We do have kind of a screenshot PDF that will show you how a student can log back in to Scholarship Idaho and make a change, just like what Joy just went through. So we'll email that out today as well. I know we're getting close to time, but I know there are some questions that maybe, Dwight, thank you so much for being just awesome on the chat. We're so glad that you were here to help out today. But there was a question, and Mallory and Joy, I can't remember, but we may have to find out the answer. But there was a question about if a student, when they get to that section on the FAFSA that asks them to enter parent information, so to invite their parent to contribute, will it allow them to skip that section and keep going and then come back to that section later? I don't remember the answer to that. Mallory, Joy?
I don't think so, but that's something we might have to follow up on. I don't think
Lindsay, that's a great question. I wish we, that's a really good question. So I will try to reach out to our kind of trainers and ask them that. My gut is telling me no, it's going to make them fill it out before they can proceed. But I will find out and then email that answer to this group for sure. That's a great question. Let's see. Just wanted to make sure, after parents contribute, do they need to go back in and FAFSA? So when the parents contribute, when the parent finishes their section of the FAFSA, it will ask them to go ahead and sign. So it could be that ideally, right, you have a FAFSA night and you have both the student and the parent sitting there and they can do it together. Because when the student invites the parent can then just log in and finish their section and they can complete it. It could be though that you're helping a student at school and then the parent's going to finish the FAFSA on their own at home. But when that parent finishes their section, then they will sign and submit the FAFSA. And so it could be where a parent submits the FAFSA and the student's not around and that's it, like the FAFSA is submitted. But the student will get an email at that point saying your FAFSA has been submitted, it is complete. You can log in to see your status summary. So hopefully that answered your question.
Jenny.
Yeah, Dwight, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just chime in? I think how I'm interpreting that question is previously, anytime there was changes made to a FAFSA, like both people had to always sign it, right? And I think with the different paths that people take now, if the student finishes their part and submits it, then the contributor can submit their part and submit it without going back and student re-signing it. So I think because they've kind of split the contributor from the student in terms of the process, it may actually make it easier to make updates for certain sections for families. But I don't know if that answers the question. So I think the answer to the question that I'm reading was no. The student should not have to go back and resubmit it with a signature after the parent or the contributor finishes their part.
Thank you. I'm so glad you understood that. And that was really good information because yes, that did happen a lot in the past where any kind of change made on the FAFSA, it was really frustrating for them, both parties, to have to sign. So thank you for that clarification. It sounds like no, if a change is made, whoever is making that change will be able to just make the change and then resubmit it in their specific section. So thank you, Dwight, for the clarification on that. That's awesome.
Well, as far as they won't make it difficult, and corrections have to have both signatures, but on the initial submission, definitely it shouldn't require both. But yeah, I haven't seen the change process yet to know that, but I can't see any reason that they would need to do that anymore.
Got it. Okay. We'll also see if we can find some clarification on that. If they do have to make corrections, who needs to sign? Okay. As you can tell, you guys, we are all learning this new process. So thank you so much for all your great questions. We hope this was helpful. We hope that at least now you have some tools to know what is coming and like give yourself a little bit of a heads up. Please reach out with questions. We are going to send out this recording as well as a lot of the resources that we talked about today. So there'll be some links, there'll be some PDFs, and then we'll also try to go ahead and answer the questions that we were not able to answer in this section. So I know it's a little after 11. If you need to hop off, we 100% understand. There are some extra questions here, so we'll stay on and try to answer what we can. Feel free to stay, or if you need to go, we get it. So there is a question. If we advise students to skip the Governor's Cup scholarship in order to submit for Launch an Idaho Opportunity Scholarship to meet the November 30th deadline, and if the student works on the Governor's Cup essay questions later and wants to go back, will that invalidate any contingent award for Launch they might have already received? Joy, do you want to take that one?
I know I've been seeing my headphones are
we can hear you
today.
I can.
Okay. I don't think that will do anything because the Governor's Cup is a separate application. So, but I'm just sitting here like trying to think through every scenario in my head as I answer, but I think it'll be fine because they're separate applications. It shouldn't invalidate anything.
Yeah, that's what we've been, like the advice we've been giving, because I know if students select Launch, Opportunity, and Governor's Cup, then they get stuck on that Governor's Cup page because they have to write an essay and they have to do the letters of rec. So typically they'll stop out because they're like, oh, I don't have time to do this. So we have been telling people, like, don't check on the Governor's Cup right now. Just submit your Launch and your Opportunity, get that submitted, and then you can always come back and work on Governor's Cup later. But in terms of like a contingent offer, I do not think that would have any impact on that at all. Like Joy said, we can verify with the Launch team, but I don't think that that's going to be an issue at all.
One thing to keep in mind with Governor's Cup, just so you guys know, is if somebody's trying to just apply for both of them, just willy-nilly, if it turns out they're not going to be in a CTE program, their CTE Governor's Cup application is not going to be reviewed. So just keep that in mind to be careful about which one.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I know there was a question earlier and I neglected to talk about it, but Joy, I'm so sorry. Can you reassign me as the host really quick so I can share? There was a question about if a parent created an FSA ID a few years ago, but they can't remember any of the information. They cannot start a new one because they're already going to have an account under their name and social. So I'm going to quickly just share from this screen. So this would be like where they would go for their FSA ID. They already have an account. They may not remember how to log in, but they're going to click on that one. And then they need to just go through the steps of forgot my username, forgot my password. So they can either try to recover it. Like a lot of times, if they verified their phone number or their email, they can use that as their username. So they could try that. If they still can't get in, then they can recover their username. If the issue is their password, then they just click forgot my password. They will have to put in either their email, their phone, or their username if they remember it, and then their date of birth. So just there is a way for them to recover that, but they'll just have to go through those steps of like forgot my username, forgot my password. So yeah, good question. Did I miss any other questions in the chat? I know we're over time. Thank you all so much. We will plan to do some additional webinars coming in December prior to the launch of FAFSA, but thank you so much. Thank you, Dwight. We really appreciated you being here today and providing your knowledge and expertise. Thank you, Joy, for walking us through that. And we'll send out all this information this afternoon. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day and weekend.